In the quiet archives of the Ambrosiana Library in Milan, there rests a collection of papers that have survived 500 years of war, neglect, and theft. The pages are yellowed, smelling of old parchment and oxidized ink. To the casual observer, they are a chaotic mess of sketches, wings, water wheels, geometric shapes, and anatomy. But if you look closer, specifically at a small, unassuming diagram tucked away in the corner of folio 100, you begin to see something that defies the logic of history. It is a mechanism, a series of gears and pulleys that do not serve a mill or a clock or a wagon. They mimic the articulation of a human joint. But there is a problem. If you were to take these measurements and build the machine exactly as drawn, it would not work. The gears would lock. The tension would snap the frame. For centuries, scholars looked at these errors and called them mistakes. They believed the great genius was simply bad at math, or perhaps too distracted to finish his thought. But what if they were wrong? What if the error was not a mistake, but a lock? We are told that Leonardo da Vinci was a painter who dabbled in invention. We are told he was a dreamer who imagined helicopters centuries before the combustion engine. But the truth is far colder and far more brilliant. Leonardo was not just an artist. He was a military engineer employed by ruthless warlords. He lived in a time of absolute paranoia where a single good idea could make you a king or get you killed. He did not just hide his work behind mirror writing, he hid it behind failure. He designed his machines to break. He designed his greatest invention, a device that blurred the line between the living and the dead, to remain broken unless you possessed the key to the true code, a key he took to his grave. Today we are going to open the Codex. We are going to look past the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper into the mind of a man who realized he had created something the world was not ready to receive. We are going to reconstruct the forbidden invention that cannot be rebuilt. To understand the machine, we must first understand the man's obsession. It was not beauty. It was not God. It was nature's mechanics. Florence, 1470, a city of money, blood, and art. Young Leonardo is an apprentice, but he is already different. While others are studying how to mix pigments or plaster a fresco, Leonardo is watching the birds in the marketplace. He is not admiring their song. He is watching the angle of the wing against the wind. He is calculating the ratio of bone to feather. He realizes early on that nature is not magic, it is engineering. This realization is the foundation of the mystery. If a bird is just a machine, made of meat and hollow bones, then a human being is just a machine made of muscle and lever. And if a human is a machine, then a machine can be built to be human. This was a dangerous thought. In the 15th century, the soul was the domain of the church. To suggest that life was merely a complex arrangement of pulleys and hydraulics was heresy. It was to reduce the divine to the mechanical. Yet this is exactly where Leonardo went. He began to keep notebooks, thousands of pages, but he wrote them in reverse, from right to left, requiring a mirror to be read. Historians often say this was because he was left-handed and wanted to avoid smudging the ink. That is the comfortable explanation. It is the safe explanation. But consider the content of these notes. He was designing tanks. He was designing rapid-fire cannons. He was designing barricades and fortress walls. He was working for the House of Sforza in Milan, a dynasty built on mercenaries and steel. He wasn't hiding his handwriting to keep his hands clean. He was encrypting his thoughts because they were weaponized. He knew that intellectual property in the Renaissance was not protected by law. It was protected by secrecy. If a rival engineer stole your notebook, they stole your value. So he created the first layer of the code, the mirror script, but that was only the surface. As his fame grew, so did his ambition. He began to look inward, literally. This brings us to the most gruesome and essential part of the investigation. The dissections. You cannot build a machine that moves like a man unless you know how a man moves. Under the cover of darkness, often in the chilling atmosphere of the Santo Spirito Hospital, Leonardo cut into the dead. He wasn't just looking at organs, he was stripping the skin to reveal the cabling underneath. He drew the tendons of the hand with the precision of a suspension bridge blueprint. He drew the heart not as the seat of emotion, but as a pump analyzing the vortex of blood flow. He realized that the human body operates on levers. The bicep is a pulley, the knee is a hinge, the spinal cord is the transmission. In his notes, he began to replace bone with iron and tendon with rope. He was merging biology and mechanics into a new discipline. It was around 1495 when the theory became reality. This is where the story shifts from observation to creation. Records indicate that during a pageant in the court of Ludovico Sforza, Leonardo unveiled a marvel. It was a knight clad in German-Italian armor, but there was no man inside. Witness accounts from the time are sparse but terrified. They describe the knight sitting up, standing, moving its head, lifting its visor to reveal an empty void. It could wave its arms. It was the world's first fully functional humanoid robot. For years, this was considered a legend, a myth exaggerated by time. But in the 1950s, scholars analyzing the Codex Atlanticus found scattered sketches that didn't make sense in isolation. A gear here, a cable system there. When they finally pieced them together, they realized these weren't separate inventions. They were the components of the mechanical knight. Modern roboticists have since attempted to reconstruct it based on these drawings, and this is where they found the anomaly. The blueprints in the Codex are flawless in their geometry, but fatal in their function. If you build the knight exactly as Leonardo drew it, it is paralyzed. A specific gear in the hip mechanism is drawn backward. Another cam in the shoulder is misaligned by a fraction of an inch, enough to jam the entire assembly. For a man who could draw the swirl of water in a brook with photographic accuracy, these are not accidental slips of the pen, they are trapdoors. Leonardo had inserted deliberate flaws into the schematics. He knew that his notebooks might one day fall into the hands of men who lacked his conscience. He ensured that anyone who tried to steal his work would build a useless pile of scrap metal. Only he possessed the mental correction key. Only he knew which gear to flip, which cam to rotate. The mechanical knight was a parlor trick for a duke, but for Leonardo it was a proof of concept. It proved that movement could be automated, but it was tethered. It ran on a system of external pulleys or limited internal winding. It was not truly independent. This drove him toward the forbidden invention, the machine that would not just mimic motion but mimic intent. We must move forward to the year 1515. Leonardo is an old man now. He is living in France under the patronage of King Francis III. The fire of his youth has cooled into a deep, melancholic wisdom. He has seen his war machines built and used to slaughter. He has seen his patrons fall. He is thinking about legacy. He is commissioned to build one last great automaton for the king, a mechanical lion. The accounts of this device are even more specific than the knight. The lion was said to walk forward several steps on its own, independent of any human handler. Upon reaching the king, it would stop. Its chest would open, revealing a bouquet of lilies, the symbol of the French monarchy. This sounds like a toy. But consider the engineering required for a machine to walk on four legs, maintain balance, count its steps, stop at a precise moment, and trigger a secondary mechanism to open a compartment. This requires a programmable memory. Leonardo had invented the computer, not a digital computer, but an analog one. He used a series of rotating cams, irregularly shaped wheels that push against levers as they turn. By changing the shape of the cam, you change the movement. If you stack enough cams, you create a sequence. Step, step, turn, stop, open. This was the true code. It wasn't written in ink. It was written in the physical shape of iron and wood. But where is this lion now? Where are the blueprints? This brings us to the silence, the missing pages. When Leonardo died in 1519, he left his notebooks to his faithful student, Francesco Melzi. Melzi treasured them, keeping them safe for decades. But after Melzi's death, the collection was scattered. Pages were torn out and sold as souvenirs. Volumes were bound haphazardly. In 1965, in the National Library of Spain in Madrid, 2 red leather-bound volumes were discovered by accident. They had been catalogued incorrectly and lost for hundreds of years. These are known as the Codex Madrid. When scholars opened Codex Madrid Bashos, they were stunned. It was a treatise on mechanics so advanced that it rendered much of the Industrial Revolution redundant. It contained detailed drawings of ball bearings, worm gears, and bicycle chains 300 years before they were invented. But it also contained something else. It contained the study of friction and the pursuit of perpetual motion. Leonardo spent years obsessed with perpetual motion, a machine that runs forever without energy. Eventually, he concluded it was impossible. He wrote with disdain about the seekers of perpetual motion, calling them alchemists and fools. He proved mathematically that energy is always lost to friction. Or did he? There is a theory, darker and more compelling than the rest, that suggests Leonardo didn't stop because it was impossible. He stopped because he was terrified of what he had found. Deep in the structure of his later machines, there is a recurring design, a specific arrangement of weights and levers that appears to generate more force than it consumes, but in every instance he leaves the drawing unfinished, or he draws a brake mechanism that seems unnecessary. Why would an engineer sabotage his own quest for the ultimate power source? Look at the world Leonardo lived in. He saw how the Sforzas used his tank designs, armored turtles firing cannons into crowds. He saw how the Borgias used military engineering to crush resistance. He realized that if he gave the world a machine that could move indefinitely, a machine that did not tire, did not eat, and did not sleep, he would not be liberating humanity. He would be enslaving it. Imagine an army of mechanical knights, powered by a self-sustaining core, marching without fatigue. It would be the end of flesh and blood. The true code of Leonardo da Vinci is not a hidden message about the bloodline of Christ. It is an ethical firewall. He realized that technology evolves faster than human morality. He saw that we are clever enough to build the engine, but not wise enough to steer it. So, he began to edit his own legacy. There are rumors of a final invention sketched in the missing pages of the Codex Atlanticus, a design that combined the programmable brain of the lion with the articulated body of the knight. A true automaton, a machine that could perform complex tasks without human intervention. It is believed that Leonardo built a prototype, not a toy for a king, but a test for himself. The story goes that in his final days at the Château du Clos-Lucé, he sat with this creation. He watched it move. He heard the whir of the cams he had cut with his own hands. And he felt a profound, chilling emptiness. The machine moved, but it did not feel. It acted, but it did not know. It was a mockery of the life he had spent his career trying to understand. He took the machine apart. He threw the gears into the river or melted them down. And then he went to his journals. He found the pages that described the core mechanism, the programmable sequence that gave the machine its will. And he didn't just cross them out. He didn't just use mirror writing. He destroyed them. What remains in the notebooks we have today are the husks, the body without the soul. We have the gears for the arms, the pulleys for the legs, the frame for the chest. We can build the shell, but we cannot make it work as he did, because we are missing the timing, we are missing the sequence, we are missing the software. Modern engineers who try to rebuild his inventions often find themselves having to cheat. They have to add a modern motor here or a computer chip there to make the robot balance. They praise Leonardo's vision, but they assume he just didn't quite have the technology to make it real. They are underestimating him. He had the technology. He was the technology. The delayed gratification of this mystery leads us to a singular, uncomfortable realization. The reason these inventions cannot be rebuilt is not because Leonardo failed. It is because he succeeded. He succeeded in building something that he decided we should not have. He looked at the trajectory of human history, at our wars, our greed, and our thirst for dominion. And he made a conscious choice to withhold the final piece of the puzzle. He left us the questions, but he took the answer with him. The true code was a test. If we were smart enough to figure out the mirror writing, we were smart enough to read the notes. If we were clever enough to spot the deliberate errors in the gears, we were clever enough to fix them. But the final barrier, the missing logic of the programmable core, was a barrier that could only be crossed by someone who understood the danger of crossing it. Leonardo da Vinci was not just the first engineer. He was the first ethical hacker. He hacked his own designs to patch a vulnerability in human nature. As we stand in the library today, looking at the faded ink of the Codex Atlanticus, we are not looking at a blueprint for a machine. We are looking at a warning. The forbidden invention isn't a mechanical lion or a robot knight. It is the unbridled capability of technology without the restraint of wisdom. Leonardo saw the future. He saw the automation of war. He saw the displacement of the human soul by the cold logic of the gear. And in a final act of genius, he saved us from himself. He left the pages blank. And perhaps for our sake, they should remain that way.